At a fancy wedding, a woman spots a stranger standing silently in the crowd, and another woman is carried away on a stretcher, missing a kidney. No one knows why. No one dares to ask. But one thing is certain. When you live off a body part that doesn't come from the same source, you carry more than just the body part, but also the debt that no one sees. The debt beneath the skin, a choice, a cut, a debt forever. The clink of glasses under the crystal chandeliers fell like snowflakes across the ornate ballroom on the outskirts of Lake Michigan. Everything about the wedding seemed designed to blur the lines between reality and fantasy. The twinkling candles, the icy white ribbons tied around the necks of the chairs, the orchestra playing Mozart's late symphony. Claire Hamilton stood in the middle of it, a cold symbol of perfection, a tight black dress, her hair pulled back, her eyes slanted with eyeliner, but beneath the makeup was a body that was rotting away. Claire had end-stage renal failure. She knew it, and she hated the fact as if it were an ink blot on her perfectly programmed life. The party was at its height when a commotion erupted from the hallway behind her. A woman was being wheeled away on a stretcher, her entire body covered in a white blanket. Blood had smeared a faint red line at the corner of her leg. No one spoke clearly, just a cold murmur, internal organs bleeding. From which floor, Claire didn't know why she had stepped out of the crowd. She followed the nurses down the dark, foggy hallway. In front of room 8 and 12, the sight stunned her, a long, thin trail of blood, rolling along the white tiles. Inside, a few police officers were silently taking notes. A doctor shook his head wearily, and before she was gently pushed out, Claire caught a glimpse of something, a dripping IV, an empty cooler lying on the floor. She turned back to the banquet hall, but now the music was a dull blare. A cold feeling spread across her back. She didn't know why, but there was something about the silence a cut her mind couldn't ignore. The next day, while all the guests had gone home with their wedding photos and souvenirs, Claire stayed at the hotel. She wanted to know what had happened, but the press was silent. The security force was evasive. The hotel manager simply replied, "A medical emergency." Claire walked down the 8th floor hallway, where she remembered seeing the stretcher being wheeled away. Everything was cleaned up so perfectly. No blood, no trace. But then, in the corner of the hallway, near the fire exit, she saw someone. The woman stood alone, holding a phone but not pressing anything. Her dark hair was loose, her face was thin, her eyes were expressionless, as if she were an afterthought from the party, uninvited, unremembered. She stood motionless, as if she had been waiting there for hours. Claire approached. "You were a guest at the wedding yesterday." The woman did not answer immediately. She just nodded slowly, her eyes never leaving the small window at the end of the hallway. "I don't remember seeing you at any table. I didn't sit at any table," she replied, her voice low and dry. Claire felt a chill run down her spine. There was something about the woman's presence that made the air thick. "Do you know what happened last night?" There was a pause. Then, with a look through the glass of the hallway, "Someone lost their limbs." The words were like a knife that slid across Claire's side of the brain. She left without saying anything more, but in her mind, a name appeared not from the guest list, but from a hunch. Lena Reyes, the strange woman, the one on the sidelines of an unsolved case, the one whose eyes were fearless. That night, Claire Hamilton sat alone by the penthouse window. She opened her laptop and typed Lena Reyes into the search bar on Reflex, not knowing what she expected. But she knew that in a world where people have money and time to worry, everything leaves a mark. There wasn't much information. A few old photos from her medical school days, long hair, sharp eyes, but somehow hardened, a profile of a volunteer in Peru, which had suddenly disappeared from all platforms about 4 years ago. No medical records, no social media accounts, no record of permanent residency. She had seen people like this before. People with a past were like shadows, both present and lurking. Claire wondered why she cared. But then, the lingering memory of the missing organs, and the way Lena stood there, defenseless, unafraid, made it impossible for her to look away. The next day, she went to Michael Donovan's office, her doctor, her fiancé, who had worked for an international charity. He was sorting through documents for a new assignment. "Have you heard of Lena Reyes?" Michael looked up, a flicker of confusion in his eyes, too faint if Claire hadn't been so observant. "No, it sounds familiar, but not very clear." "Why do you ask?" Claire didn't answer right away. She just looked at him, then nodded. "I guess I'm wrong." But she knew she wasn't wrong. She had read the look. It wasn't denial, it was avoidance. 3 days later, Claire tracked Lena to a dark suburb about an hour's drive from downtown Chicago, where an old clinic had shut down, now leased by a non-profit medical organization. She waited in the car, the dim streetlight sweeping across the windshield like surgical lights. Lena entered, carrying a file. The door was unlocked. Claire glanced at her watch, then walked out, her steps as light as a breath. The clinic was quiet, with an old antiseptic smell. Through the half-closed door, she heard a conversation. "The file is ready. The recipient has blood type B+. This process needs to be confidential and fast. I just need the money to pay my mother's hospital bills. Then I'll disappear." "Lena, this isn't right. This isn't saving people anymore. We all know that right or wrong is a matter for the living." Claire choked. She had no doubt now Lena was really involved in the organ trafficking ring. And with that tone of voice, she wasn't the victim. She was the one who initiated it. Claire left the clinic in a daze. In her car, her hands shaking, she called an anonymous FBI tip line. "I have information about an organ trafficking ring. A person named Lena Reyes. The address is..." She hung up and closed her eyes. She thought she had done the right thing, but she had no idea that 3 days later, news would spread in a dark corner of the medical internet. A nurse named Maria Elenas, Lena's former colleague, had jumped to her death overnight after being investigated for organ trafficking. Claire was stunned. The photo of Maria posted in the article was the person she had seen in a small frame in Lena's file. Claire realized she had not just called the police on a criminal. She had killed the only surviving part of Lena Reyes's heart. The evening fell over Chicago like a thick curtain, heavy with steam and the sound of car horns muffled by the rain. Claire was in her car, parked near the company, about to open her umbrella and step out when a figure appeared in front of the car. No umbrella, no hunching, just standing straight and looking into the windshield. Lena Reyes. Claire opened the car door and got out. "What the hell are you doing here?" Lena did not answer. The wind blew the rain sideways into their faces, as if erasing all boundaries between speech and silence. "That woman, Maria, is she your friend?" Lena looked up, slowly. "No, she's all the family I have left," Claire gasped. "I didn't know it would go this far. I thought, who do you think you are?" Lena's voice hardened. An angel of justice, a moralist from the bench. She moved closer, not angry, just like someone reading a long preparated indictment. Do you know why we did it? Not for money, not for guilt, but because no one helped. No one saved my mother. No one saved her. We saved each other. And then you, from somewhere warm and clean, made a phone call and thought you had solved the problem. Claire took a half step back, soaking wet. I don't know. No, you don't know. And now you'll never know. Lena pulled something out of her coat. Not a knife, not a gun, just an old hospital bracelet with the name faded. Maria used to say, some people die because no one calls for help. Some people die because someone calls the wrong person. That day, you called the wrong person. Lena left, not waiting for a response, leaving Claire standing alone, wet and cold, with the rain tearing at her skin. 3 days later, Claire walked into Michael's apartment, where everything should have been familiar. The mahogany bookshelves, the white piano that never played, the cup of tea he made for her every morning. But this time, there was no answer, no piano, no footsteps, just an envelope on the table, next to Michael's phone, turned off. Claire opened the envelope, a single, unsigned note. I borrowed him. Meet you where you ruined everything. Bring nothing but the truth. Below the text were GPS coordinates, leading to an abandoned medical facility on the edge of town. Claire clutched the paper, her heart pounding not with fear, but with a more terrifying awareness. She was entering a game whose rules were no longer hers. That night, as it began to rain again, Claire drove through nameless streets, the streetlights blurring like erased warnings. She stepped out of the rusted door of the old medical center. There was no sound, just a flickering light and the sound of breathing. She walked in. Michael was tied to a chair, his mouth gagged, and Lena stood behind him, wearing an old medical scrub, but holding a medical record in her hand. Claire's medical record, to be exact. You need a kidney, right? Lena smiled. Not madly, only prepared. I found a donor, but before I do, I want you to experience being a patient. Claire was speechless. Lena moved closer, placing the file on the stainless steel table. This is where Maria used to work. This is where she dreamed of saving lives, not with money, not with blood, but with hope. You took that away. Now, I want to see if you have the guts to give it back. Beside Michael, a blood bag hung. On the other side, an operating table was ready, and Claire, standing in the middle, was the one with no choice. The wind howled through the rusted iron door, blowing the hem of Lena's blouse like a surgical drape before a skinning session. Claire stood frozen in the cold morgue-like room, not sure if it was blood or something thicker, fear, anger, or a guilt forced to bear a name. Lena walked around the metal table in the middle of the room, her hand resting lightly on the medical records. I didn't mean to kill anyone, Claire. You kidnapped Michael, set this up, and then say you didn't want to kill anyone. Lena smiled, not a sarcastic smile, but a strange, quiet smile, like the end of a long prayer. I want justice, rather. I want you to feel what Maria felt, weighed, priced, chosen. You thought you were the one making the decisions. No, today I will show you. None of us have any right to another person's life. Claire took a step forward, her voice trembling. So what do you want a kidney from me to give her justice? Lena looked Claire straight in the eye. No, I want you to donate it. To her mother, who is waiting for a transplant. Her identity has been erased from the system. No one knows. No honor. No credit. Just silence. The way Maria lived. Silence fell. Michael struggled slightly. His eyes were wet, not with fear, but with despair. Claire understood that he was looking at her the way a doctor looks at a patient who is beyond saving. Only comfort. "I can't do that," Claire said. "I'm dying. You know I need my kidneys." "That's why," Lena said. "I'm giving you a choice. Life for life. That's it." The clang of metal. Lena placed a small surgical knife on the table. Between them, the shadow from the ceiling light bulb stretched across the mottled cement floor, like the final line between justice and revenge. Claire could no longer hear anything. Michael's breathing, the flickering lights, Lena's footsteps. Everything was blurred, like a dream. She sat down on the cold metal chair, her knees shaking. "I lost my mother to kidney disease," she said softly. "I know what it's like to wait every day, every call, every file. But you know what? I never stole it from anyone. I waited." Lena stood still. "You wait, but you have the means to wait. Maria doesn't." Claire raised her head. "So what? Now I'm evil because I have the means to live?" "No," Lena replied, stepping forward, handing over the recipient's medical records. "You're evil because you've dragged others down to the same abyss without your seeing it." Claire opened the file, a black and white photo, an elderly woman with a gentle smile. The words above it, "Patient No, 4471 Reyes, Maria's mother. She's alive, but weak. No one knows her daughter is dead. She still believes Maria is working far away, making money, returning." Claire closed the file. "You forced me into this choice because you knew I wouldn't be able to bear it if I refused." Lena didn't answer. "You want me to carry this debt for the rest of my life, so that every checkup, every scar on my back, every pill I take reminds me of what I can't do." Lena sat down across from her, softer than ever. "No, Claire, I don't want you to live with the trauma. I want you to live with the truth that there are debts, that no one comes to collect, but we still have to pay." The silence stretched on like a jury trial, and in the dim light, Claire understood. Whatever she did, she had long been convicted, and that sentence was right under her skin. Claire didn't know what made her jump. Maybe it was the image of the woman in the file, or the desperate hiss of Michael's restraints. Maybe it was Lena's eerie silence, as if she no longer wanted to be in control, but was just waiting to see what Claire would do. She walked toward the stainless steel table, where the small scalpel lay silent as a witness to every wrong choice. Claire looked at it. Her hands were shaking. "If I do this, there will be nothing left of me." "Yes," Lena said behind her, "but at least the last remaining part of Maria will live." Claire held the scalpel in her hand, but instead of turning toward the operating table, she turned back, and with a strangled scream, she lunged toward Lena. The clang of metal, the crash of a chair. Michael screamed, the gag still in place. Two women struggled in the middle of the room as cold as a freezer, white blouses torn, documents scattered all over the floor. "You want me to live with the debt?" Claire screamed. "Then you will live with this scar too, in a moment of chaos." Claire held the knife. Her hand was injured. Blood soaked the handle. Then, slap, a heavy sound. It was unclear who attacked first. It was unclear who retreated first. Only Lena staggered. Blood gushed from her stomach, dark red. No screams, no curses, just a hoarse breath. She looked at Claire, not angry, not hurt, only one sentence. "So now you understand." And she collapsed to the floor. Claire fell to her knees, grabbing Lena's shoulders. No, I didn't mean to. She looked at her bloody hand, back at the knife. Then she looked at Michael, his eyes wide, unable to cry out, unable to intervene. The choice had been made, but not the choice she had imagined. Everything after that blurred like a dream. Police, ambulance, a series of sounds that did not belong to reality. Claire woke up in a hospital room. White light piercing her eyes. Outside, a doctor was checking the records. A young nurse leaned over, smiling. Congratulations. The transplant was successful. Claire turned her head slightly. The IV was running. Her back ached. On the wall monitor, the readings were stable. She stammered, "Whose kidney?" The doctor glanced at the records. An unidentified female. Died at the scene. Completely consistent. No next of kin. Organ donation completed under emergency law. Claire couldn't breathe. She tried to sit up. The IV line fell out. The machine beeped intermittently. No, it can't be her. The doctor approached, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. "You're in post-operative shock. Just rest." Claire looked up at the paper-white ceiling, her hand clutching her aching abdomen. In her head, Lena's last words echoed like an echo in the empty operating room. "You will carry this debt under your skin." Tears welled up in Claire's eyes, not because of the physical pain, but because of the truth that Lena had chosen to die so that she could live. And now, inside her, was a part of the woman she could not forgive nor save. There was no one to prosecute, no lawsuit, no funeral. No one was collecting the debt, but that debt was sewn inside her, forever. A week after her kidney transplant, Claire Hamilton was still in the intensive care unit. She saw no one but the nurses. Michael had not returned. The police had not come. Lena's family, if she had one, had not shown up. She did not know whether she was being forgiven or abandoned. One quiet afternoon, she woke to find a small object by her bedside, an envelope with no name, no sender. Inside was a short note. Just a single handwritten sentence: "I used to hate you, but the debt still needs to be paid. L." No date, no anger, no resentful tone. Just a statement, as if the dead were speaking to her not from the grave, but from her own body. Claire folded the paper and placed it on her chest. Beneath her skin, the new kidney was still working, still alive, still keeping her alive. But from that day on, every time she put her hand on her stomach, she no longer felt the recovery, but the invisible weight of the person who died so that she could live. She called Michael. He didn't answer. She wrote a letter to the police, not to accuse anyone, just to tell the whole story as a confession, not to ask for forgiveness, just so that the dead person wouldn't disappear in silence. And then she did the last thing. She put Lena Reyes' name on the honorary organ donor registration form, with the note, "Died while trying to save another." No one knew if it was true or not, but Claire knew. She owed her this. Early in the morning, the rain stopped. The hospital room was white with sunlight. Claire walked to the mirror, removing the bandage from the surgical wound for the first time. A thin line of stitches ran from her ribs to her lower abdomen, a clean, delicate cut, but never gone. She stared at it, not to examine the wound, but to remember. Remembering Lena's every look in anger, in torment, in the final moments before she collapsed. Remembering the question no one had ever asked her: "Do you know whose death you live by?" She burst into tears. For the first time, since her mother died, since her diagnosis, since she stabbed Lena. The tears wouldn't stop. The nurse rushed in. Miss Hamilton, are you okay? Does the incision hurt? Claire shook her head. No, I don't. Then she looked at the nurse, her eyes red. I just want to take it out. Take what out the kidney? Take it out of me. The nurse was stunned. Claire screamed, Please, I don't want to carry it in my body. She collapsed on the cold floor, clutching her stomach, screaming. Doctors rushed in to hold her, injecting sedatives, their voices shimmering. The monitor blinked. Tears fell onto the white floor, blending with the light shining through the window, as if a part of her soul was being pulled out of her body. In the corner of the room, where no one was looking, a piece of paper fell from the medical file. The corner was torn, leaving only a smudged line of ink. This is a debt you'll carry under your skin forever.